This is the Ridiculously Amazing Insurance Agent Podcast, hosted by me, Kelly Donnie Upiro. This show is for growing insurance agencies looking to maximize their biggest investment, their people. Listen to the top agency performance partners clients share their story on how they boosted their performance by executing a plan. Let's head to the show. Well, everybody out there, we have another version of our Ridiculously Amazing Insurance Agent Podcast, and I'm gratefully here early in the morning with two amazing people. We have the mayor, Heath Sharon. Heath, do you want to say hello to everybody?
What's going on, guys? It is early here. It's real early for me.
Listen, that early bird gets the worm, Heath. You gotta celebrate the early birds.
That's exactly right.
And I'm also here with a fellow Bentley University now. When I was there, it was college, but Raghav is a little younger than me, as we just learned. Raghav Tanna, who is the founder of Tarmika. An awesome opportunity. I'm glad that our clients get to hear a little bit about commercial raters, because this is kind of like taboo out there, right, Raghav?
Oh, yeah, Kelly, really nice of you guys to have me. I'm excited about this and to discuss Tarmika.
I'm impressed, Kelly. Just to start off, you pronounced his name right on the first try. I was impressed.
Well,
we've known each other for a few years.
Yeah.
It's like it might have taken a couple of years for her to pick it up.
There you go.
Well, and we got to work with your dad.
That's true. That is true.
You get to work with your dad, so I feel like I'm part of the family.
Exactly. He's no longer owning Tanna Insurance. It's sold.
I saw he sold, which was probably good for him, right? He gets to have a little bit more freedom and flexibility, play with the grandkid.
Yeah, I think he's in Florida right now golfing. So, I mean, I don't know if he's playing with grandkids, but he's definitely doing something.
He's got
Every
the good
time
life.
I hear stories like that, I'm like, this is why I'm doing it. Like, I will get there and it will be so awesome. I think it would be great for us to just start by letting people out there know. So just so you know, a lot of our clients tend to be 15 plus, people, insurance agencies. We're going to be heading to one today that's 150 people. And so I think a lot of times, like, we call them the new hip cool kids, all know about all the insurtechs and all the fun stuff. But sometimes those second, third generation agencies are maybe not as aware of some of the things out there. So why don't you explain what it is that you do? Because you're sort of revolutionary. This isn't as common as having a personal lines rater, right? So I want to give it to you for us to tell us a little bit about what you do.
All right, awesome. Well, I appreciate it. So Tarmika is a commercial lines rating platform. Essentially allows you to complete a single application and get quotes back from multiple carriers using an API. And this all started from me being in the insurance space. I was on the agency side. And I had an account and tried to place it with 8 carriers, got declined 8 times after I got a premium back, after everything went through. Underwriters didn't want it, and it might have taken 2 or 3 days. And then the client found a quote elsewhere. So I realized that there had to be a little bit of a better work stream for insurance agents, for CSRs, for anyone in the industry. And that's when we started building Tarmika. We were trying to avoid any poor user experience. So all we do is integrate with carriers that have existing APIs, or we help them build their APIs. And now we're up to over 35 carriers on the platform, over 1,000 agencies on the platform. So it's been a fun 4 years, but it's definitely still very new having commercial lines rating platforms within agencies. There's still hundreds, thousands of agencies that have never heard of us or the other ones out there.
Absolutely. And I know we were just chatting before we got on here. So I think that there's like a lot of myths out there as far as how things go. So I'm hoping we can kind of dissuade them. But this is all meant for our listeners out there. We're relaunching our time management program, and we have an extreme focus on things that are going to pick up time in your day. And yes, we may have to slow down to learn a new system, but if we slow down for 60 days, how much time do we pick up in the long run? And Raghav, I have a big statement I always say, like, if my biggest fear for this industry as, and I still have 25 years to go in this industry, is we become blockbuster because we do not embrace change.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I think the most important thing within an agency, whether it's your personal life or your work life, is managing your time properly. And I will do things in my personal life and at work that will take an extra 4, 5, 6 hours a day for a month, but then it's saving me 2 hours every day for the rest of my life.
Absolutely.
And I think that's pretty much that's our tool. It's going to take a month to learn how to use it and use it properly. It's a simple tool, but there's a lot of complexities to it. And agencies today are spending 4, 5, 6 hours a day on quoting commercial risks, where really the input of information should take no more than 5 minutes. And we have, go ahead.
That's the name of the game with the small commercial. A lot of our clients are personal lines and then small commercial. And people, talk about, come from a making money standpoint, you're not making money when you're touching those small $2,000 bops 14,000 times, or taking the time, as you mentioned, with the keystrokes, entering all the information in to all the different systems, going back and forth with CSRs for account you make $20 on.
That's the problem, is you're not making enough. You're not making enough to spend time on this. And the worst part about it too is, let's say you do quota with 5 carriers one year. The next year, that $1,000 BOP wants to be remarketed to 4 other carriers. Every time you do that, you're losing money.
Right.
The reason we develop this is there's a solution now where, hey, you entered this in last year, just press requote or remarket, get your 5 quotes back. It took you 10 seconds. And then this whole thing about not remarketing clients' risk, which I also agree with. You shouldn't remarket every year. But
or $1,000 policy at all.
Yeah,
exactly.
If you're forced to, Kelly, and it's going to take you 1 minute because that client has 80 other businesses that you're writing.
That is a different story.
But press the button, and that's all it takes.
Yeah, we'll allow that if it's connected to several other accounts. We'll allow the remarket there. But, it's one of those things that if you're going to make money in small commercial, you've got to, take this opportunity to save some time, which obviously is going to make you some more money.
100%.
So let's dive into, some myths about raters in general. And because I think it's when I look at raters, I see personal lines and commercial lines having similar scenarios, right? So one of the first ones, of course, you hear all the time, well, the rate is not accurate in the rater.
We get that a lot.
You get it everywhere.
That's a daily occurrence. The interesting thing about commercial lines raters, and the interesting thing about the new integrations that personal lines raters have, is they're all API based. So an application programming interface that ties directly in to the carrier system. So the rate you get back in our system is the bindable rate you get in the carrier system, or the referable rate in some regards. But all of the rating information for commercial is collected on our side. There may be eligibility criteria that they might ask you down the road. We have one carrier that added COVID questions last year, which you had to answer in their system only. Those now are gone, but there's a lot of those situations where people come to us and they say, hey, this is not accurate, this isn't bindable. And they go through 20, 30 quotes and they realize every single time the rate they saw on our page was the rate they ended up binding with the carrier. And I wouldn't say it wasn't always a myth though, because that was the case a while back. You would do a rate call 1 for personal lines raters, and then it would change to whatever the new rate was when you got the driver information. So things used to change. That doesn't happen anymore on commercial. The rate you get is the rate you bind, essentially.
Well, and let's unpack it, right? It's all about the quality of data you put in. So if you don't have all the information and then you get flagged with more questions, of course it's going to change. In personal lines, no reports have been run. Right? So, Raghav, you have no speeding tickets. I've got no tickets or accidents. Well, right. No reports have been run. This is an indication. This isn't a bindable quote. And I say, lower your expectations of raters and call it data integration.
Nope.
If even just the magical little data fairies take it from one to the other and you don't have to do this 700 times, is your life not better?
It's interesting too, because there's high expectation for all technology, which is necessary. I think everyone needs to expect more out of their technology platforms. However, there's also a need to take a step back and understand how complex some of these solutions are and how difficult they are to maintain and build and create. And it's not just from our end, it's on the carrier side. It's on the agency side. There are so many things that could go wrong. And you don't get much leeway with agencies. And I think that's good because it makes us improve. But it also sometimes makes you think, am I not explaining this properly? Did we not build this properly to make sure that they're getting everything they need out of us? Over the years, that's changed, and it's become easier and easier because we get agent feedback. We understand them a little bit better. Even coming from the agency side, I don't think I understood it all that well. And you're 100% right, though. It needs to be treated as a data play. Can we input data once and get back enough information to move forward without wasting our time?
Well, and I think we also have to talk about there's human error. So, right, like Heath and I do a quote at the same time. We could still come back up with two different numbers because we both ask different questions, or he put X, Y, Z in and I put Y in. And so humans are also not accurate.
Humans are inaccurate and sometimes humans lie.
What?
I think that's
that never happens.
You talk about losses, right? I mean, we have more quotes that come through that say they didn't have losses, and they'll call them back, hey, this had 6 losses. Where did I put it in? It says, well, there's a box for that. It says add your losses, and you just didn't want to do it because you know it's going to come back and say decline.
Maybe they won't find out.
Maybe they won't find out. Maybe. You know, we do have good agents. I don't think that happens often. But we get told from carriers all the time that sometimes the data is a little bit inaccurate, and this is why carriers are doing things on their end to pull back more third-party data and make sure everything entered is accurate and reconciled with what's out there in the market.
So another myth that we hear too, about raters and, all of these other things is that ultimately, and I'm curious what you say about this, because, we do training and sales training and things like that. There's a lot of people out there that would much rather do data entry than cross-sell. And so if you can have the time, you can always say, I don't have the time, right? I've got to do all these quotes. It's going to take me hours to enter this information in. So if your brain is more wired to do data entry than to do other parts of your job, this is a good cover.
I think that's a problem for the agency. Someone should always want to do cross-sell more than data entry. Cross-sell makes the business more money. Data entry loses money. So if you're a principal and someone says that I don't have time to do cross-sell, well, they don't have time to make you money then, and that's probably not the right employee for you.
Exactly.
Or they need training to feel more comfortable, or we still need to take it away from them to develop that.
That sounds, I don't know if you can train that though, can you?
You can make people more comfortable with it. It's a combination of things, right? Like right incentive plan, right training, right vehicle to do it.
Right.
Like through a strong renewal review program, they just basically ask questions and then it comes up. But it's the, there's the people who want to crush the stack of paperwork every day and the tasks, and there's people who want to talk to people, and usually they're competing brains. You said something earlier that I think is really important to explore with raters in general, which is it's 2 time saving events, right? It's the initial quote and the potential remarket later on down the pike. And we harp on this a lot in personal lines when people don't want to use a rater. It's like, hold up, like you're saving time here, but then you're saving time in the future. Yep. And I want to talk about that for a second, but then also I want to hear a little bit about if your system also integrates with management systems. So like, what's the kind of ideal workflow? Do they start in your system? Do they start in the management system and push? So I know I just gave you 2 questions all at once.
No, so I think the remarketing element of our platform is more important than the new business element. Mm-hmm. The remarketing allows you to take data from Better Agency or Agency Zoom or Aureus Analytics, which ties into management systems, or a couple of management systems that we are tied into. It allows you to push the data into our system for accounts that already exist. And then you're already done. I mean, you're not entering any additional information. You're answering a few questions. There's no actual data entry. I think more agencies, so, for example, let's say in the last 3 months, our system has done over 40 million in premium coming through the system. Out of that 40 million, I wouldn't be surprised if 25 to 30 million of that premium was remarketing.
Wow.
That's my opinion. We don't actually know that to be true. We're trying to find ways to find the lead source type so we know where the data comes from. But that's an important part of the business. I think that's, frankly, more important than the new business side. It's much cheaper to retain a current client than to go get a new client. And if you have a current client and you need to remarket for whatever reason, it's in 3 years, 4 years, you just want to make sure that they're still happy, you can do that through our system. So I think that's important.
And what level commercial are you guys focused on? Like, is it small, mid, large? Is it everything? Does it?
So all comes down to the carrier API. So we had an account come through yesterday for our customer success team that was over $200,000 in premium per carrier. And then we have accounts that come through that are $200, $300, $400. So it does range quite a bit. I would say the average is probably about between $3,000 and $6,000 for BOP, and the same for workers' comp, a little more expensive for commercial auto.
Now, do you guys put, within Tarmika, a minimum premium type threshold in there to say we won't? I know you just said you'll do small $500 BOPs or $300 BOPs, and what are your thoughts on that in agencies?
I think those should be quick hitters, and we don't have a minimum threshold in our system. Carriers do have minimum premiums that they put through their API, and there's some logic built in there. Those policies that are $500, $1,000. I mean, Kelly's seen my dad's book of business. He made a living off of that. He had a lot of large accounts too, but he had a relationship with his building where they would just pass him 10, 15 leads a week, and they'd be $500. It would take him 5 minutes to put it into our system. He would bind it with the same carrier every single time. He knew where it was going unless they declined it. They would take 10 minutes. He'd call the client, say, here's your premium. It's the lowest it can go. There's no negotiation. We're not quoting another carrier. Do you want to move forward? They would say yes. And he probably bound 10 to 15 of those every single week for 5 years.
Well, that's the name of the game. And that's another myth that I hear on the commercial side is we're not going to write those small BOPs, those small accounts, because you're going to lose money there. But again, coming back to what we're talking about today, the less the keystrokes, the quicker the response. Using Tarmika is going to help you to be able to write those small accounts.
If there is a breaking,
they make money.
There is a breaking point, right? So you spend an hour on something, it's done. You got to stop. If you spend a certain amount of time on something, you just say, no, I'm not going to move forward. I think that's true in any business. We do that all the time. You have to fire a client every once in a while. Sometimes they're just not worth the money. And that's okay. But I wouldn't say that small BOPs aren't worth it, because they are.
Well, and it's also cross-selling personal lines. Like, there's life insurance. Like, you can use it as a lead generation system to other departments in your agency. If you can make that initial transaction smooth and efficient, because at that level, the business owner also doesn't want a bunch of hassle, right? Like, I have this theory that no one wants to spend time on their insurance. Like, I want to spend as least amount of time as I can on my insurance, just because I believe you have an agent, and that should be kind of where you're at. Like, I know I have to do my part, obviously, but I don't want to go back and forth with paperwork, and now we need this, now we need that, and it ends up being $1,000 expenditure in my business.
Yeah, I mean, this is why companies like Lemonade wrote so many policies, is people didn't want to spend time on insurance. And I know there's this whole, at least I've been following everyone talking about Lemonade lately and how their stock price is down, but that model, it worked in theory. They have thousands of customers. They took business away from agencies. Yes, it's not going well for those clients now, but it showed that people wanted to buy in a different way. It showed that people wanted to still work with agencies, but they wanted it to be easier.
Well, and back in the day, I call Lemonade second generation Zenefits. You remember Zenefits back when healthcare reform was coming in? It was like the cool, hip way to, buy your health insurance for your small commercial, because no one wants small group benefits in this world.
Yep.
If you have 3 employees that need benefits, it's like you are a non-standard, no prior auto client. You can't even pay people fees to take your small group benefits.
I do remember setting up our health benefits when we first started. There was only 3 of us.
Yeah.
It was brutal. It still is.
Yeah, it's like how many people? Oh no, we're good. It's like,
yeah.
If only PNC agents could get as snotty as like the small group benefits people. Like they turn away at all.
there's a model out there somewhere for small group benefits. I just don't know what it is.
Yeah, and it changes every time. Like, right, like now it's so politically tied, so it's like it's a little bit of an unstable marketplace.
Yeah.
So tell us, with your system, let's talk a little bit about the management system integration, because obviously that is another key and component. And to me, right now it's all manual entry. So there is no difference. So it's just a bonus if you do get the opportunity to integrate with some systems.
Yeah, and that's the key. It's an opportunity to integrate with systems. We need to be able to integrate. There are certain systems that have allowed us to integrate. So I'm actually, like for example, Now Search. We're meeting with them next week to start the integration process. We've agreed with Partner XC to integrate. Hawksoft has a Google Chrome extension that they're utilizing with us, and it's working well. I think those systems work well. Agencies, even better agency. I would say better agency more than anyone else. They have the ability to just pass all of the information that we need into our system. And it's extremely helpful for us. We also have integrations with a couple agencies that use Salesforce. So we're trying to make it as seamless as possible, which is why we released our new embedded product as well, where you can just put our API into a point of sale system, into a customer's or a large business's website, so they can pick up small business for you. And we have a whole bunch of those live now. So all of that data, it's direct to consumer through an agency, essentially. They can pass all that data to us, get a quote back. The customer gets a call from the agency saying, Travelers has a quote for you for $500. Do you want to move forward? Yes, and it's bound.
That's pretty cool. So
That's a big one for us. That's been going well for the last year or so.
So tell us, like in your world, from working with agencies, I think agency owners usually get really excited about this stuff, right? They're like, "Oh, this is awesome! I can't wait! It's going to change my life. We're going to sell so much insurance, and they're all excited." And then it comes down to the frontline staff. So, how do you see frontline staff responding to the rater? And I know that there's all different levels, right? There's some people who would love to go back to paper files.
Yeah.
And then there's some people like, this is amazing. This helps me and changes so much. So what is some common feedback you hear?
So our customer success team does a really good job getting people engaged and starting the process and making sure that they're enjoying the use of the platform. They have touch points, weekly touch points at first. Sometimes every day they talk to some of these agencies when they get onboarded to make sure that they're comfortable right off the bat using the new system. But the feedback we always get is, I know exactly where this piece of business goes. I'm just going to go to that carrier. And what we do is we now have use cases. So we have agencies that use our system all the time. And we'll get calls and say, we never knew Hanover could write this class of business and this well with this much coverage. And we'll send that out to people and say, okay, you might know the class of business, but things change constantly. Products get released constantly. Pricing changes constantly. And you're not always going to be right. And that's okay. You don't have to be. But here's what this helps with. You might still place it with that carrier, but you can put it through our system, get a quote from that carrier and from others, and maybe those will be a little bit stronger. And if they're not, they're not.
Well, and here's the other part of that. As a former commercial agent and owner, the other problem with that is some of those carriers that you didn't think would write that are difficult to go through their systems, and you have to go through so many different screens or click different buttons. But going through Tarmika, you eliminate so much of that, and so a carrier, maybe Hartford would write something, but you didn't want to do that because it was a difficult system to go through.
And I think there's some systems that are phenomenal that are out there. I think carriers have done a good job, but you're absolutely right. There are some systems. No offense to those carriers, but they're wonky, they're tough, they're difficult. And just because you think that carrier is best, I can almost guarantee that there's a better carrier that you could have found. It's just that you're used to that one, and it's easy, and it's comfortable.
Right, it's the path of least resistance. And there was a carrier in our agency that would write so many different classes, and people are going to know what I'm talking about right when I say it. But it would, every single time you want to write something, it was a 19-page application to get anything done. And they were a standard carrier. And they had good rates, but I'm not going to go through 19 pages of information just to get a quote.
And you shouldn't. No one should.
Right.
The comfortable thing is I think that's the biggest problem in any industry, in any business, is you have to be comfortable. And I hate that.
Right. Well, we do a lot of things about like change management, and we say, who likes change? And no one raises their hand, because, and I get it, right? It's fear, uncertainty, and doubt. It disrupts the day and makes you feel uncomfortable. You're not confident. And in many agencies, they're spending so much time on the wrong things that they don't have any time. So what ends up happening is the work backlogs while they're trying to get a new system. That's frustrating. It's easy to abort mission and go back to what you know and what you're comfortable with. And it's something that we all have to fight against because there's still 3,500 agencies without a management system in America, right? Like the agencies that our clients are buying are sometimes paper files, and I'm like, how did you live? You know, like this isn't a newfangled thing anymore.
But they're successful.
Well, and you got to define success, right? Like they're profitable. They live in little towns, and they've served their community, and they've done their thing, and they bumped along and all that other stuff. But to be like that resistant to change we had an agency that bought another agency. They had 2 filing cabinets across one wall, across the other wall, home on one side, auto on the other, in 17 different colors of file folders. Premium financed personal lines.
That's tough.
And he literally went down, the agency went down to the bank that was right next door and says, what are the rates for personal loans? He's like, I've got a deal for you. He's like, we're going to stop premium financing. But if they can take out $1,000 loan at 8% versus 17 to 25%, he's like, we're just going to send them to you.
Oh my God.
Just until he could get a handle on the book. He's like, but we're not doing premium financing of personal lines anymore. And it was just like, it was a nightmare. But, you know, people just kind of get stuck in their ways.
Yeah, they do. And people are resistant to change. But it is extremely important. And it's not just true with Tarmika. It's not just true with all the other insurtechs out there. It's just true in general.
Yeah.
If you're not doing stuff that makes you feel a little uncomfortable, a little different, it's never going to go anywhere. And maybe some people are okay with that. I know there's people that just want to sit, do their jobs day by day, and get through and retire at 65. But most agency owners want to keep growing their book. And if you want to keep growing your book, you have to adopt some technology. You have to make things more efficient. And that was the goal of Tarmika. And I'm sure that's your goal, going out to all these agencies and getting them to change.
Well, and I want to say this to everybody out there. If you're complaining about how backlogged and busy and overwhelmed and stressed out you are, yet rejecting the idea of a commercial lines rater, what you're doing is being judgmental. You have not tried a commercial lines rater. And like, we harp on this, Raghav. Like I said, everything I tell you in the training today, you are going to judge. And you have to decide right now, do you want to be a judgy person? Do you want to be a mean girl? Or do you want to keep an open mind and try it for 30 days and then come back and have an intelligent conversation about it? But if in your mind, your eyes are rolling, you're like, that's not going to work. I need everybody in this room to catch themselves, as opposed to say, I haven't used it. I haven't tried it. I have no personal experience with it. I haven't even seen a login to Tarmika. Like, how do I know in my heart that this is not the right way to go? Why wouldn't I explore it versus reject it up front?
That's every system now. And I think everyone does that. It's agencies, it's you, it's me, it's he. We
I'm
say
perfect. What are you talking about?
we're always going to say that, oh, that's not going to work, or that. Like I see, and I'm probably the worst about this, but I'll see new companies pop up, and I'm always happy that founders are coming up with new ideas, and I love it. But I see the idea, and I'm like, man, I don't know if that's going to work. But before I do anything, I look at it, and I actually call them, and I say, hey, can you show me what this actually does? Because I don't want to be judgmental until I know for sure. And I like being wrong in those scenarios, because I do love when new people start new companies and come up with cool ideas, especially in insurance, because we need it more than anyone.
Well, and I would say the first idea might not be the final idea, right? Like you go, I'm sure even with your product, it's gone through a lot of different variations and revisions, and probably doesn't look the same today as it did a couple of years ago.
In 2 years, I'll release a video of our first iteration, our second, our third, and our final product, if it ever is final. But the first version of Tarmika sucked. It was really bad. And
minimum viable product. You go MVP.
You always release something that's not even close to perfect. It's the only way you get feedback. If you wait till it's perfect, you'll never release it. It's still not perfect. And then you might have missed
the mark, and you spent a ton of money on it.
Exactly. So,
speaking of which, Rags, go back. Have you ever come up with a meaning for the name Tarmika? By the way, going back to the beginning, I know you just came up with a name.
I thought about this for a while, and we tried to. Our team one day, we have happy hour in our office every Thursday, and one Thursday we were having happy hour at like 5:00. And one of our employees said we should come up with an acronym for Tarmika. And we tried for 45 minutes. There is no acronym that has a K in it. I can't think of anything. Like the K just throws everything for a loop. So we pretty much gave up. So now either we change our company name or it's just going to exist without a meaning forever.
Dude, I think that's so awesome though that you have that story that I don't even know what it means. We just came up with a name.
It's so funny you say that because when we used to do happy hour, before I started this company, I used to work for pre-InsurTech Tech. And when we would do happy hours, we would just cast each other and who played us in our movie. Like, we were much more low level than analyzing the meaning of a name. It was like, all right, well, when the movie about our company becomes live, who plays who?
I think I don't really have a person that would ever play me. I haven't ever thought about that. I will though now that you say it. I always said that after going through what we've gone through for the last 4 years and all the changes and iterations, I think any founder can say this. Probably write a book about it. Not that anyone would read this book, but
It'd just be therapeutic.
It'd be therapeutic. Knowing all the things that you went through for 4 years plus. It's 4 years coming up in like 10 days here. So,
oh, congratulations.
Thank you. So knowing all that stuff, I feel like it would be therapeutic for me to be like, this is all the nonsense that I went through for all this time, but it worked out.
Well,
going back to what we talked about before we hit record. Imagine 4 years ago, Kelly, this dude was 25, starting his company.
It's a Bentley degree, Heath. It's worth all of its weight. It's a Bentley degree.
No, Bentley degree.
That's what they tell you when you sign up for, when I was there, it was $45,000 a year. So I'm not sure what kind of torture you guys went through.
It was expensive. And I think Bentley's a great school, awesome school, but I think I learned more doing this than I ever did in college. And
100%. 100%. I always wonder that.
Going back, I would have taken all that money that I spent, my parents spent, and I would have invested it into this because it probably would have been worth more.
Well, what I always say is I self-financed most of my education. I always say the pressure to pay that bill made me work my little tail off, working 2 or 3 jobs every single, to get it done. And I paid it off by 28. So I was like, but without that pressure, if I'd gone to like University of Connecticut, because I'm from Connecticut, I don't know if I would have been as like diligent to just say, take every opportunity, get on the airplane, anywhere you need to be there because you have $120,000 of student loan debt on your back.
It's crazy, isn't it? It's so expensive, but it does make you, it makes some people work harder, it makes some people be like, I'm drowning in it.
Or I'm going to go for my MBA and delay another 2.
Exactly. Yeah, Heath, at 25, I was pretty naive, though.
At 25, I was not sober long enough to start a company. So I digress. I do want to ask you one other thing, going back to our conversation earlier. One of the things that deal with producers, they would tell me, and another avenue that I wanted to talk to you about, too, was, 2 things. One would be, I'm still waiting on my quote. I'm still waiting on my quote, and you'd be, hearing that. And the second part of that was they were waiting on the quote because they were trying to write a welder or a roofer or something that wouldn't fit your typical, Main Street bop. Does Tarmika answer the question of E&S business? And number 2, do you have advice for those to time manage, working on those type of accounts too? Because those could be hairy.
They are. So we do get some difficult risks through the system. And the way they operate is they put in the difficult risk. Let's say it's a roofer. They get through the entire quote flow. At the end of that flow, if you don't get a quote back, it comes back fast. It'll decline fast or say, hey, this is not standard business. It does that within 30 seconds. Once you get that, though, you can download the Accord forms from our system and send them directly from our system to your E&S market. We also have 2 E&S plays, ISC and PathPoint, that are both E&S API enabled. So you can actually send those to the E&S market and potentially get a premium back from those carriers on the E&S side. Of course, they're not bindable, but you have an idea that your roofer getting a quote back. It saves time. It saves time.
Good, yeah. Going back to those keystrokes that you're saving, and you're able to print that, but get the Accord apps that you just filled out, because that's the other thing of, I'm waiting back to hear this or that. That's the biggest thing that, I talk to carriers, I have a carrier background as well. When I talk to underwriters, about working with agents, have a quick decline. If you're going to decline it, do it quick so people aren't waiting. So I think that's a huge factor you just brought up.
It's important. I think a lot of people forget about. I mean, you still need the quote forms. Unfortunately, there's better ways to do things, but E&S carriers still want them. There's a better way to get a quote forms. Submit them through our system. Get the quote forms out. They're all filled in. They're pre-populated. You send those out directly from the system, and now you've completed in one work stream standard E&S, and you'll get a quote back hopefully within a couple hours.
Well, okay, so the people that are sitting here, again, the naysayers or people like, this is really going to work. How long would it take for Heath Sheeran to sit down and quote a risk on Tarmika?
So the average time for our agencies takes between 5 and 8 minutes, depending on the agency. You get the average submission is to 4 to 5 carriers. If you are an employee of Tarmika and we had a race, our carrier relationship person, Lauren, she does a quote in a minute 20.
Is that another happy hour event y'all did?
Yeah, I think it was. I think it was another happy hour event. We try to, when everyone's been remote, we made it a hybrid. We said you can come in if you want, you don't have to. And I've been fortunate enough to have most people come in almost every day now because it's a culture thing. And I think stuff like that, the happy hour on Thursdays, a quoting race on our own platform, all that stuff it's good for building culture. It's good for, people being positive, getting out of their house because a lot of them don't want to sit at home all day.
Yeah.
So it's been helpful.
Yeah, but so the main thing I want people to hear there is if you're in Tarmika every day, you can get a quote within 2 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. And the quote comes back when you press submit. We have carriers that come back in 2 seconds, 5 seconds, up to 30 seconds, but they're all coming back under 30.
30 seconds. I'm going to lose interest. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I do too sometimes.
I'm going to ask a tad bit of a selfish question, but I actually work with a lot of agencies that do heavy farm agriculture, things like that. No dice on the platform.
Unfortunately, no, we don't have any farm on the platform. We are working on it. We've talked to a couple carriers. We're trying to build out the products, but not yet.
Farm is funky, and it's very dependent on what state you're in, what kind of farm and crop and agriculture you're into too.
Yeah, we've talked to a few insurance companies that are heavy farm carriers, and it's about building the tech. It's not that they're not interested in it. It's about building the APIs.
Well, they're not always hip to the jive too on that front. Like they don't always have the big back end tech. And I think people would be surprised to know how many carriers have antiquated tech that they're running off of, like bad, like MS-DOS style backgrounds. Like there's a great and powerful Oz on a treadmill, like powering a lot of these carriers, unfortunately. And the upgrades are not only gajillions of dollars, but have a lot of failure points on them. Yeah. And you either get rid of it and spend millions of dollars, or you keep trying to maintain it and probably spend way more. This is another scenario. It's similar to time management. Just take it down, invest the money up front. It's going to save you money down the road. And either way, you're going to blow up things, right? Yeah. Like you keep band-aiding, you're going to blow things up. You go to a new system, things are going to blow up. You just have to pick when the blow up's going to happen. Yep. That's about it. So let's talk a little bit about investment for agencies. So, what does a rater cost in commercial lines with you guys? And it might vary, and no one's committing you to anything, swearing on a stack of Bibles, but just what would an investment look like? Yeah, so it depends on the size of the agency. We do a standard, let's say mom and pop agency with 10 people, right? The typical pricing is going to be $300 for 3 user licenses, and that's $25 per additional user. But there's some monthly, right? That's monthly, yeah. There's some agencies that are larger, that have a little more complex, larger revenue shops, more users. That pricing goes up. We do have enterprise deals as well, so we have agencies like Arthur Gallagher that use it across their entire small business digital team, and those get a little pricier. Because there's a lot of complexity to that. You're doing integrations with certain systems that they have. You're doing integrations with different of their direct carriers that you wouldn't do for other agencies. So it becomes a little more interesting. We do have a white label solution, which can go on your website.
so customers can enter in directly on your website. And then we have our embedded product, which that's only enterprise and only for large brokers. But there's a lot of different products that we have, and pricing varies, but the standard, the mom and pop, is $300.
Awesome. And tell us, what does the roadmap look like for you guys? Like what are you kind of focused on as seeing the roadmap for the technology of the future?
So now we're building out bind capabilities. So you can bind from our system as well. So you get the quote back and you can bind that premium. That's how you know the rate's right? Is you're binding real premiums on the system. There's verification that goes into place, all that stuff. But we're building up bind capabilities with a few carriers now. The E&S, to Heath's point, is very new. We just released that E&S product recently. So now you can quote and hopefully start getting multiple quotes back on E&S sometime in the coming months. So those are the two focus areas for us in 2022. Down the road, 2023, 2024, we're investing heavily into our embedded product. So a lot of our work goes into meeting the customer where they want to be met on behalf of agencies. So putting our API in places where customers already trust the point of sale system and getting them a quote back from one of their agencies.
That's awesome. So you're just going to keep hammering home at it.
Focus on commercial. It's a huge market. We're going to keep hammering home on it, and no plans of slowing down just yet.
I love that. So if people are interested in purchasing, how do they find you guys? They want to learn more. What's the best way?
So the best way is to go to tarmika.com, TARMIKA.com, and click on the see a demo button, because then we'll have a salesperson reach out. We'll have someone from our team reach out, and they can show you a demo, show you how the system works. And then if you decide to sign up, we have a great customer success team to train.
Awesome.
If you've got an idea for that K in the acronym, send that to Raghav.
Yeah, exactly. I need a K.
And how quickly do you onboard agencies? Like if they sign up, today, what's kind of the turnaround time to getting started?
So as soon as we get their producer codes to them, so one of our customer success reps will send them a form to enter in all their producer codes. Once we get their producer codes, if they set up their training within 24 hours, they'll be onboarded the next day.
Oh, that's awesome. So it's a pretty quick turnaround time.
It's a quick turnaround. We have a couple carriers that require producer code approval, but at most, you're talking about 2 days, 3 days max.
Fantastic. Well, that is exciting. Well, we can't wait to see where you go and how you help agencies save time, because that's our biggest thing is, with this great resignation and hiring, it's every licensed agent has to be focused on dealing with coverages and talking to clients about coverage and doing the things that require a license. And if you can take off data entry, you have more time to help customers, not just do that copy and paste, which over time, if that's your personality, great. But for most of us in insurance, we like talking to people and helping people far more than battling with, data entry systems.
I agree. Well, I really appreciate you guys having me on, and it was a great conversation.
Yeah. And so hopefully everybody goes and jumps out there and you guys get a whole bunch of new clients, not farm ones though yet. But when you do get farm, I hope you call me first, because for some reason I have a lot of clients that specialize in farm. So, and that is a labor of love for data entry. As you may know. All right, guys. Well, thank you. And everybody out there, check out Tarmika, and we'll see you on the next podcast. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, buddy.